That's what would be around probably the time. Okay.
Everybody, we're gonna get started.
Everyone can see we're together as we walk on by, and we fly just like birds of a feather. I won't tell no lie. All of the people around us, they say, can they be that close? Just let me state for the record, we're giving love in a family dose. We are family. Hey, I got all my sisters with me. We are family. Get up, everybody, and sing. Sing it to me. We are family. I got all my sisters with me. We are family. Get up, everybody, and sing. Living life is fun, and we've just begun to get our share of this world's delight. High hopes we have for the future, and our goals in sight. We know we don't get depressed. Here's what we call our golden rule. Have faith in you and the things you do. You won't go wrong. Oh no, this is our family jewel. We are family. Sing it to me. I got all my sisters with me. Sing it to me. We are family. I can hear you, guys. Get up, everybody, and sing. Have faith in you and the things you do. Hey, hey, I got all my sisters with me. We are family. Get up, y'all. Get up, everybody, and sing. Hey, we are family. I got my sisters with me. I got all my sisters with me. Everybody. We are family.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to the first Table Talk for the Black community of 2021. I'm Stephanie Rivers, team member here at Reimagine. Honored to welcome you to the table to meet the Sister Circle. So thank you guys for being here this evening for this very, very special Table Talk. When we created Table Talk last fall, as part of Reimagine's Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Initiative, also known as JEDI, we sought to create an honest, lively, and unscripted conversation where Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian, LGBTQ, and all other marginalized and unrepresented communities could share their own unique perspective and truth via a wide array of subjects relating to how we live and die in our respective communities. And although we have these events, everyone is welcome. They are created for and by individuals in these communities, but we want everyone to be a part of this discussion and everyone to have a seat at the table. So again, thank you for joining us this evening. So if everybody doesn't mind, take a moment to put in the chat where you're Zooming from. We always like to know where everybody's coming from before we start these programs. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. As most of us live in the United States, some of you might be aware that this land is known as what we call Turtle Island by Native Americans. So please join me in acknowledging Indigenous communities, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. This land acknowledgement demonstrates a commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of colonialism. I am on the lands of the Kiowa, Comanche, and Apache in the state of Oklahoma. Greetings. If you want to, you are welcome to drop where you are located into the chat. We'll also drop a link where you can actually locate the land that you're on and share with the rest of the community. Last but not least, I want to thank the John and Juana Harmon Foundation for their unyielding support of Reimagine and our JEDI initiatives, which makes Table Talk possible. So thank you all for being present and open. I hope you were inspired by today's program. I am excited to introduce you to our guest today. And this is the Sister Circle. They are Dr. Michelle Benoit Wilson, Dr. Natasha McLaughlin, Dr. Tiffany Lowe Payne.
Everybody.
Dr. Jacqueline, Dr. Nerissa Price, and Dr. Rashida Monroe. Thank you. This is the Sister Circle, a group of friends and colleagues at Wake Med Hospital in Raleigh, North Carolina, who have leaned on each other to navigate professional and personal traumas, but also COVID-19. Sister doctors, ladies, welcome to the table. Thank you all for what you do every day. It is an honor. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to kick this off with just one question. Kicking this off with one question for you, and then I'm going to pass the baton to Dr. Monroe. We always like to ask our guests on Table Talk about the table that they're sitting at, so we get to know you a little bit better. So if each of you could just take 1 minute each to talk about the proverbial tables that you sit at as professionals, as doctors, as healers, as mothers, and just tell us who you are. And from there, Dr. Monroe, you can take it away.
So I'll start out. Can you hear me well?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I've done this exercise with you before. And when I think of the tables that I sit at, as a Black woman in healthcare, as a mother to 2 little Black boys, as a physician who cares for underserved and marginalized people, and as a member of the sisterhood, I just think I focus for me on how I can uplift us as a community and how I can, support the patients that we care for, help them to raise children free of trauma. And so I just think of myself in all of those different roles. I'm always a mother and someone who really deeply cares for our Black community. Nerissa, Dr. Price, do you want to talk about the circle or the table that you're at?
That I'm at? So I'm at a similar table. I'm also at the table of an African-American physician, the first and only in my family. I am the daughter of a family of farmers and of educators. And I think that this table that I sit at would only be here because of the sacrifices and the prayers that my family who were before me led to who I am today. I am a psychiatrist, and so I care about mental health, particularly in the Black community, where I think oftentimes we push away mental health issues and just try to just survive. But I know that mental health treatment and having a healthy mental health disposition is part of a good health plan for everyone. And I sit at a table of leadership now that I am further along in my career, that people listen to me more. So I have to use my voice to really take care of those who don't have voices. And oftentimes that has led me to work with my homeless community and those who other communities that are marginalized. And so that's the table that I sit at.
And my name is Jacqueline Hicks, and I'm a family medicine physician. But first and foremost, I am a mother of 2 beautiful girls and a wife to a wonderful husband. But genuinely, I come from a family of a lower socioeconomic class. My mother was actually considered handicapped, although she did not identify as such from thalidomide, and so she was a double amputee. And so I saw many of the health disparities when she had multiple doctor's appointments and how people would treat her just because of the way she looked, which is the reason why I went into family medicine, is to help others genuinely try to improve their lifestyle regardless of what you look like, regardless of your situation. So that is my table.
Awesome. I want to kick it over to you, Michelle. Dr. Benoit Wilson, what table do you sit at?
Well, I am sitting at a table as an immigrant of Haitian parents who immigrated here when they were young adults. And I grew up in a very typical West Indian household. And I am proud to identify myself as a Black woman who really is interested in social justice and equity. Can you guys hear us?
Yes, we got you. You're great. You're great.
Okay. Our screen just went out. So I also identify as a mother to 2, soon to be, both of them will soon be teenagers. I have one and then a rising one, Black boys, and someone who is very interested, invested in making sure that they have a safe and secure future in this country.
Okay, can you still hear us? Our screen just went out on us.
I can hear you all.
Yeah,
okay.
We hear you well. Dr. Lopane, do you want to tell us what table you sit at?
So let's see, I feel like all my tables kind of collided together. So I come from a table of being raised by a single mother of 6 children. I grew up in the city of Camden, New Jersey. So we had a lot of financial disadvantages. Really being in a place where being a physician was not something I ever saw, especially as a Black female physician. And really not even understanding at a young age that I was even smart enough to actually become a physician until somebody put that seed in me. And so as a physician now, I am not only really looking to give back to the community, especially to communities that may also have economic disadvantages, but also as an educator, as an assistant professor to medical students. You know, I am really focused and passionate about making sure that they are also trained and educated to be able to take care of all patients, especially as it comes to health disparities. Personally, I am a mom to 2 amazing young men, 2 men that are now out of college. One's in college and one is out of college. I am a fiance to an amazing man who is also a pastor of a church that's also in an economically disadvantaged area. And so we see it not just from my upbringing and what I grew up in, but also in the wonderful people that he has been called to shepherd. And so really helping to educate the Black community, helping to not just educate them, but to also show them that as it relates to the things that they've become accustomed to dealing with, that they can do better, they can be better, That is the table that I sit at, a consummate teacher at heart, always looking to show people a better way.
Last but not least, Dr. McLaughlin.
Hello, everyone. I'm Natasha McLaughlin, and the table that I sit at is one of a mother. I am a mother to 3 handsome young men, one out of college, one in college. My oldest is a graduate of Morehouse, and my middle is at Howard University. And then my little boy my youngest is in middle school. I am also a grandmother to the most amazing 2-year-old you can ever meet. I am also a wife to Melvin McLaughlin, the most amazing husband you would ever know. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in the housing projects. I was raised there with both of my parents in a 2-parent home. My dad worked for transit, hardworking, hardly ever saw my dad when he was working because he worked so hard. Worked hard to put us through Catholic school in New York. And I became the first doctor in my family. So the obligation for me when I decided to become a doctor was to be able to educate our community. Since then, I have worked in a disadvantaged area in North Carolina for about 10 years, and my goal has always been to educate the community to help us be more healthy in the long run.
Awesome. Thank you all for telling us the table that we share. I want to get started, Michelle. I want to start with you because I want you to tell the story of how, because you were the linchpin, you got us all together. Tell everybody about how you brought us all together.
So, I think the reality and the truth is that we got together because of friendship and sharing a mutual experience as physicians who are also Black women. We hold a unique place in this society, specifically amongst physicians. We only comprise 2% of all physicians in this country. And so the reality is that, like a lot of professional people, but especially Black people, we relied on each other. We needed to be able to talk to each other in very open and candid ways about some of the struggles that we were experiencing. And so we met each other through different paths, but that's really how our group started as a support system for each other, well before any plan was hatched to try to, save and help our community with regard to COVID.
And isn't it so interesting that organically we met each other, often, mostly through you, and had the support system in place before 2020 and the disaster that it was. Do you guys want to talk about, maybe I'll ask you, Narissa, do you want to talk about, 2020? I mean, it feels like, when racism and COVID collided, right? And it's kind of really shown a spotlight on, marginalized communities and, the disproportionate impact on those communities. And we're dealing with all of this, George Floyd incident, all these different things during 2020. Can you talk about how that felt, navigating that as a Black woman?
Yeah, no, I remember even before it seemed to be publicly acknowledged that every face that it seemed like I would see that had lost their life to COVID was Black or brown. Like, I remember watching the evening news with my mom and saying, "Mom, what are you noticing what I'm seeing?" And really just being horrified. And this was before it was acknowledged that there were these healthcare disparities that had come now to light in a cruel way. And it seems like around about that time, then we all were watching together again when George Floyd was killed.
Yeah.
And just feeling like, I can't believe this is happening again. I can't believe this is happening. Will somebody say something? Will somebody do something? And you know, it's interesting as I think about that I do feel like those incidences planted seeds in me and probably the rest of you guys too, that a lot of times I think we look, when we see things that are wrong, we say, why won't somebody do something about it? And it kind of hit me that I was like, Narissa, why don't you do something about it? And what can you do about it?
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's really powerful. And I think you're right. I mean, we are here for a time such as this. And, you know, you guys started, you know, Tiffany and Natasha, you guys started thinking about a social media campaign, right? So we're getting into the fall.
Right.
And you guys started thinking about what's next, like what can we do? We're like energized and galvanized. And Tiffany, do you want to talk about, I think both of you guys had the idea of kind of how we can reach our community, how we can, you know, amplify a message.
Yeah, I remember when everything first started, I think we were all, you know, even as physicians, we were all scared. Nobody knew what was going on. It was something that was new. This was nothing that any of us had ever experienced in our lifetime. I mean, the Spanish flu we knew of, but no one ever experienced it. And so when it came to how do we protect ourselves and how do we, you know, make sure that not only we protect ourselves, but we protect our families, especially when it became very clear that the African-American population was really disproportionately impacted by COVID, it really became an instance of just survival, that we had to, you know, get out and we had to educate, you know, people in our community to let them know how to protect themselves. And so I did feel really compelled to teach and educate. I have been doing some education and teaching in the community and using platforms like social media to be able to reach the masses. And so I just wanted to educate everything that I knew about COVID. I really read a lot about COVID itself. I read all the studies as it related to the vaccines, and just coming on and educating a few minutes at a time on specific topics, you know, really was helpful to many in our community. I got so many text messages, you know, people saying thank you so much because they were not able to talk to someone else about what was going on. They were having issues with being fearful, depression, anxiety, you know, all of those things. And so they just really needed a voice that looked like them, that sounded like them, that they said, you know, who can I trust? You know, we all know about the challenges of politics that ran into this, and really not even necessarily knowing what to believe or who to believe. And so when they saw somebody that looked like them come on and say, hey, this is how you need to take care of yourself. This is how you need to protect yourself. And even when the vaccines first came out, to say, hey, these vaccines are safe. Let's take them to give ourselves the best chance to not only protect ourselves from getting COVID, but to also protect our families and make sure that we can eliminate or at least sort of bridge the gap of disparities. Yeah. That was really important.
Yeah. And that's what I saw in my clinic actually. At the onset of the pandemic, there was an influx of minorities establishing. They needed a primary care doctor and they needed one fast, but there was one caveat. They wanted somebody of color. Right. And it would seek out physicians of color. And I'm sure all of you know the same thing, that everyone would come and they said, I don't trust anyone, but I do trust you. And so that was my job, to educate them and let them know that, hey, it's okay, not only about the virus, but about the vaccine. And I think that it's important, you know, from here on out, that we get more minorities within healthcare as physicians to help, I guess, promote health within our own community.
Yeah, and we know representation matters.
Right.
Representation matters. And so we have this kind of grassroots, kind of organic effort. But then Natasha and Michelle, do you guys want to talk about how we, what was next? I mean, we talked about, you know, going out into churches and lending our voice, and you know, Natasha, you had a kind of shots in arms social media campaign to amplify. Do you want to talk about that?
So, you know, the way it started for me was when me and Michelle worked together. So you know, me and her kept talking. I was like, we have to do something. We have to do something. People are not going to get this vaccine. There's no way. And I mean, it was just an obligation. You know, I felt obligated to do something because I knew that with our influence that, you know, we might be able to change some minds. You know, when we all started this thing, it started just from the, you know, campaign, the wanting to do the social media campaign. So we did that, but that wasn't enough. The next thing we did was Rashida went to drive-through vaccine and saw that, you know, the predominantly people there were, you know, was Caucasian. So she said, well, my goodness, we need to do something about this. So she's the one who sat at the table and, you know, called us all up one night literally and was texted. Like, literally texted us one night.
How many people can you find?
Hey, I can get us this many vaccines. How many people can you find?
Yeah.
She was like 300. We have 300. And I was like, okay. So, you know, we got together and we end up getting like 1,100 people within 48 hours. And we did our first drive-through vaccine clinic in January. And then after that, you know, it just became more and more. We started linking with our community partners. We all know somebody in the community. I've been in Raleigh for about almost 10 years now. And just with my knowing the whole geographic area by living in Henderson, North Carolina for so long, we knew which communities was most affected. So, you know, I have friends in the area, you know, friends who are in the communities like Garner Road Community Center, which is in the 27610, which was the most affected. And we just called among them and the community leaders to help us find the people who needed to be vaccinated.
And you know what that meant to show? It went to show when you think about not just the vaccines, but health disparities in general, if you go to them, if we stop waiting for people to come to us, if we actually are willing to go into the community and go to them where they are, meet them where they are wanting to get the help. They're willing to get the help. They just need somebody who's passionate enough, like Rashida and like the rest of us, to be able to say, hey, we're willing to go out there and help out.
Yeah. And when we started our venture, we, you know, to be honest with you, we wanted to be intentional. We were intentional by having minority physicians because we felt like if, you know, we're giving these vaccines and they see that we were giving these vaccines to them, that they would definitely be trusted. I mean, I can remember my auntie called me. She is diabetic and she is one of my only aunts who wouldn't get the vaccine at first. She called me and she said, hey, because everybody else got it and me and my family have this group text. We were posting pictures and she called me and she told me that I was the reason why she was getting her vaccine. You know, I knew we could make a difference then.
So Natasha, you touched on a good point. I know a lot of people may have heard about our story and you know, heard about what we've done, but you're right. It really just started with this organic group, and I saw that there was a need, and I reached out to this organic group that had already formed and was already doing things as a grassroots effort, and said, what can we do? Can we get Black and brown people? And it's so interesting because if you remember, in the beginning, we all thought this was going to be about hesitancy, right? We thought we were going to be educating people and overcoming hesitancy, but in 24 hours, was that people were desperate for the vaccine. When the supply was so limited, the demand far exceeded the supply. And when we were challenged with, can you find 300 people by this Sunday, right? This is 6 days ahead. Can you find 300 people who are willing to get vaccinated from historically marginalized populations? Like you said, Natasha, we ended up before that Sunday, we found 1,100 people who were interested. And since then, whether it was through a drive-through or mostly strike teams where we go into the community, and the beauty of that is we leverage our community partners. They know the community. They know who's in need, right? And there's nothing complicated about the way people register. Your pastor, you know, or your community member calls you and says, hey, would you like to get vaccinated this Saturday? And it's just a paper registration, right? So we overcome the computer access, the internet access, transportation, because we're in the community. Trust, because when your pastor calls and says, I got vaccinated with this group, the health equity team, the sister circle, come and get yours. People are so willing. And so we thought it was going to be hesitancy, but it really is get the vaccine to where the people are and the people who need it.
And eliminate barriers.
Exactly. And break down the barriers.
Yeah, but we've also, I think, learned a lot about what the issue is among different racial and ethnic groups too. I mean, that for me was a big eye opener, because we also partner with Latinx organizations who are not only doing their own activities, but are also working with us. And when we're talking to members of the Latino community, the concerns are also about, you know, being asked about identification, and some places are asking about insurance cards, and as opposed to when we're talking to Black communities, they're hesitant because of the historic racism that exists in the country and has been a significant obstacle with regard to government sanctioned racial programs that have been accepted and promoted in this country in the recent past. And I think we also have to remember that the folks who have experienced that once for firsthand, they're still alive today. You know, the people who recall things like the Tuskegee experiment, and specifically for Latino and immigrant communities, the forced sterilization programs in this country, and other complete atrocities, we have not fully answered for those as a country. And so of course that's going to affect how this vaccination education efforts are handled, the compassion and the understanding of our history, but also the importance of acknowledging that that is a stain on our history, and saying, you know, what have we done to earn your trust? And so we're uniquely positioned, I think, because we are Black. Our community oftentimes will trust us because they know that we've experienced some of the same pains and sorrows and you know, and failures in our healthcare system. Rashida, in fact, I don't know if it's something that you perhaps want to speak on, but you've experienced some of that within your own family, and you shared that with us and other people. Is that something that you would like to kind of use to help relate?
Absolutely, and I have my brother's permission to tell that story. To be honest, Michelle, there are too many stories to name. My father, who is now deceased, there were so many interactions, negative interactions, that felt like they were racially based, that he was an uncontrolled diabetic who didn't want to go to the doctor. And I remember the time when I was standing in his bedroom with him with a facial droop, slurred speech, and decreased movement of one side, and we called EMS, and they said, well, he passes the stroke eval, he's fine, and they wanted to leave him there. I said, no, you don't understand. My dad speaks as normally and as clearly as I do. This is not normal. And it wasn't until I said, I'm a physician, I demand you take my father to the emergency department, that he got transportation for a stroke that he was having. My brother presented with symptoms, neurological symptoms, completely unrelated to my father's stroke, but of weakness and inability to do things that he's a young, healthy, active person. And the physician flat out told him, the neurologist who was evaluating him, that he thought he was lying and faking it. Now, there is absolutely nothing about my brother that would make someone think that he wasn't being completely honest and truthful in his account of what he used to be able to do, 30 push-ups, versus what he cannot do, lift a pin, right? In months' time. And this physician, I said, well, I need to get on with him, right? I call this physician, I explain, I'm like, you must not understand who my brother what he used to be able to do, who he is, trying to humanize him. Because, and that's what we have to do so many times as Black people, is like get people to see us instead of our skin color, but as a fully fledged and worthwhile human being. And so I tried to give that color, and help this man understand who my brother is. And he told me he thought my brother was lying and faking. I, that day, looked up who else worked at that neurology office in Atlanta, Georgia. And I found that there was a Black woman there. I called her through the office. I did not know her. And I said, I need your help. And my brother is there right now. And I need you because he's not being listened to. He's been there 4 times. She went in, she evaluated my brother. She told the tech what EMG study they needed to do. That day he was diagnosed, thanks to her, with myasthenia gravis, for which he got appropriate treatment and is quite well to this day. But there was a time in there where I thought, there was a time during that period that I thought my brother was going to die because we didn't know what was going on and he wasn't getting the help that he needed. And he called me and he said he felt that. And, all it took was this man to believe him. I mean, who of your parents, what? I'm sorry, I'm becoming overwhelmed because it makes me so angry when I think about it. But what about him said, I cannot be believed?
Yeah. I think that really too speaks to the larger issue, Rashida. I know that, we as we're getting older and as baby boomers, we're taking care of many of our parents. And, my mom is also now deceased, but really how navigating the healthcare system is so difficult. I remember when going to the nurse, when she was in a rest home before she passed, and going through and kind of being the champion for her, and how difficult it was for me, even as a physician, to navigate some of the places that she needed to go. And I said to myself often, gosh, I'm a doctor and it's so hard for me to navigate and make the phone calls and do the things that I need to do. I just can't imagine how my patients who don't know as much, or who don't know who to call, or don't know who to, how are they getting through? Even with COVID, just getting a simple test, going in and getting a simple COVID test, having somebody believe you to say, hey, I have these symptoms. And even as physicians, we all saw stories of some of our other Black female physicians, one of them who died with COVID because she wasn't believed that she was having issues. And so it really does speak to the bigger issue in our community about wanting to be heard, wanting to be believed, and really getting the care that we need to get. And how do we address that? How do we address being able to navigate this healthcare system, and not just us navigating, but helping our patients and our families and other people in the community be able to navigate it more?
I will say that Jackie was about to talk about that, because I know that's affected you personally and your family.
Yeah, I think that's where representation matters. Mm-hmm. I think that's why there is a shift, so to speak, in patients seeking out people of color, because they feel that we will listen. Mm-hmm. Like I was saying before, my mom, she was a double amputee, one below the knee, one above the knee, actually was able to drive a regular car. But when people looked at her, they saw a disabled person. And so they treated her as such. They wouldn't listen to her. They thought that she was a pain seeker. but she carried wooden legs. Back then, they didn't have the sleek prosthesis that they have now. They were solid wooden legs. I mean, she stepped on my feet a couple times, and it hurt really bad. But they were wooden legs, and she would have a lot of pain. And I can remember seeing her crying in the room because the doctor didn't believe that she was in actual pain. And so that actually struck a nerve with me. I'm like, why don't you listen? What is it about her?
What is it
that you don't want to listen? And you know,
Jackie, and I think related to what you're saying, I would like you to, well, I have the advantage of, as an OBGYN who works with Natasha, I'm constantly sending you patients, Jackie. And actually that's kind of how Jackie and I got to know her, because I was like seeing Jackie's name on all my patients' charts. And I was like, we have 1 million patients together, Jackie, what, you know, and we oftentimes have, and Natasha and I talk about this all the time, we oftentimes have those patients coming into us saying exactly what Rashida said, you know, and you yourself said, Jackie, that patients are looking for us because they inherently trust us, and they know that, you know, when I look at them, and for us specifically, it's women that we take care of, and pregnant women specifically, that we can relate to them, because the sad thing is that oftentimes we have the same stories, right? So Natasha, if you can speak a little bit more to, with regard to our realm of OBGYN, some of the concerns that our pregnant and our childbearing age women have with regard to some of the topics that we're talking about with regard to being believed, and the concern, quite frankly, about Black maternal mortality in this country, where it's, you know, Black women have a 3 times higher risk of dying in childbirth in this country. And it's certainly something that is very much a hot topic. And it's something that we talk about with each other and with our patients every day.
Right. So what I would say, probably in the past, I want to say 3 years, I have noticed, and I've been practicing 23 years now, that patients are more intentional. When they come to me, they have looked for me and they tell me, I wanted to see you because, you know, you are Black. And I'm looking for Black doctors. Do you have a Black this? Do you have a Black family doctor, a Black pediatrician? You know, because they trust us. So, you know, like Michelle said, you know, and then with us, you know, we see Black women and they are scared. I mean, sometimes they will come in our office crying because they're like, I need you to take care of me because I do not want to die. So how we address this in our office, we have discussion with our partners, you know, because we want them to know, because it leads to uncomfortable conversations when, you know, you have people walk in a room. I mean, we've experienced it for years. And, you know, they look at you like, you know, you're different. And, but, you know, with our partners, we have a great, I mean, I love working with the docs I work with because they listened to us. They understood. They wanted to know, how do we talk to, you know, Black patients to make them trust us? I mean, and we had that open discussion with them, you know, about it. So what we do in our practice is we have a lot of standard protocols and things to keep women safe. For example, we just had started using baby aspirin to prevent people from preeclampsia. I mean, one moderate risk factor is just being African American. You know, if you have anything else, then you already have to get baby aspirin. So just being African American is a risk alone for hypertension. I mean, the other thing that we have to do too with our patients is sometimes we have to have those difficult conversations with our patients. You know, I was telling Michelle, you know, when you are African American, already starting, you know, with morbid obesity, hypertension.
For some reason I didn't get notification that you called.
Oh, it was a long time ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know, with hypertension, we have to have those difficult, you know, discussions with patients sometimes, like, okay, you need to be the healthiest you can possibly be before you even get pregnant. because these are the risk factors that we talk about that, can, make a pregnancy so complicated. And those are difficult, things to say to patients, but we have to do that to keep them healthy.
Natasha, can I jump in on two things that you said?
Mm-hmm.
One, I love how you said that you talk with your partners, who are not Black, and had open discussions about them. I think it is so important that we do that.
Yeah.
And that we're educating. So part of my job as a campus director, medical educator for, residents and medical students is having these conversations. We talk about the book Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. We talk about the history of how medicine has interacted with patients of color in this country. And when they're armed with that knowledge, it gives them the opportunity to then address the elephant in the room, right? And when you're sensing and you understand that a patient of color as a non-Black provider may have an issue with trust, I think it's so important that people can have that conversation and say, you know what, I will never fully understand as a non-Black provider, but let me see what I do understand and how I want to partner with you. And I've seen people as a pediatrician where we care for 95% of the people in my clinic are people of color. And I've seen some of my white partners do that. So I love how you said you have that conversation. The other thing I want to clarify really quickly that I make sure I make the point with my residents and students is there's nothing about the biology of being Black.
Correct.
That puts you at risk for you name it, right? Because we all went to medical school and we learned like increased risk of diabetes, hypertension, cancer, you name it. But there's nothing inherent about the DNA of being Black, right? But when you look at the socioeconomic factors, right? Access to healthy food and clean water and air that's not polluted and safe green spaces to exercise and food that's not overprocessed and all these different things. And then the trauma of racism. Yeah. It's our race, it is racism that puts us at increased risk of developing, you name it.
Exactly.
Right.
And Narissa, can you speak to that even more, Narissa? Because as a mental health professional, I'll be very candid and say that I sought you as a colleague and a developing friend to say, hey, listen, COVID, this is really a tough time for me, Narissa, because I had a cousin of mine who was a physician who was on a ventilator in the ICU for 2 weeks, and we were convinced we were going to lose him, and thankfully he survived. And then 6 months later, unfortunately, we lost his brother and my cousin to COVID, and he left behind a 4-year-old. And not only that, but we also are all medical professionals who see patients every single day. And especially early on in this process, before we knew about the importance of masking, and we were always very diligent about hand hygiene, but there were so many things that we learned very quickly, and we just didn't know how to fully protect ourselves. And yet we're seeing Black people and Latino people dying at 2.5 to 3 times the rate. And that includes us, right? And we have children, we have families. And so can you speak, Narissa, to that importance of mental health and how do we get through this together?
Thank you. Yeah, no, when I was telling you guys in the beginning that it was just this convergence of COVID with racial reckoning, with the financial fallout, with all these things, I was really just kind of embodying the stress and the angst and anxiety that so many people were experiencing. And when we looked at some of the anxiety rates, we saw record levels of anxiety that somewhere between 40 to 50% of people in the summer were having anxiety or depressive symptoms or increases in substance use. And that's extraordinary, when some of those rates were single digits just the year before. And so, one of the things that I often think about is one of the silver linings of this whole experience is that, as I mentioned, that mental health oftentimes gets pushed aside, and we have so much shame when we talk about mental health, and we don't talk about it. But there was something about this year that people just couldn't help but say, you know, I'm having a hard time, I'm struggling. And that's really the first step with recovery, is being able to be self-aware and to be able to say, you know, I'm not doing well. And I do feel like, particularly in the Black community, that's often been a challenge, that we've kind of, you know, I've heard the stories here, and the word that keeps coming to mind is trauma. It's trauma. And specifically how racialized trauma, how having this chronic racial trauma, plus when if you hear someone calling you the N-word, or if you're seeing on TV people of your racial or ethnic background being murdered with very little consequence, when you see people dying of historic racial inequities, that everyone seems to acknowledge that that's been a problem, but there's nothing we can do about it. That's what they say, or like, you know, they give up before they even try. That causes racial trauma, and trauma is deadly. Chronic stress and trauma leads to a lot of these conditions that we were talking about, the cardiovascular disease, the depression, the hopelessness, even people having suicidal thinking. And so I think we have to, you know, what Rashida said, we have to look at that racism is a real threat to health for all of us. And that if we don't consider it in whatever we're doing, when we're talking about outreaching to anyone to help them with better wellness, if we don't consider that, I think we're missing something big. And Tiffany, I know you work a lot with stress management, and I'm just really curious what you've been talking to your patients about, and especially as how it relates to obesity, which is another one of those conditions that can be a consequence of chronic stress.
Absolutely. I tell you, I mean, even sitting here listening to you all, you know, some of the things that I think I want to make sure that, you know, everybody who's listening really understands is that, you know, one of the take home messages is that our stories are their stories. Like Michelle said, we are you. That is why we understand you, because we are you. We experience some of the same things, even to a point of stress and you know, some of the mental health issues that we've had. And then also really understanding that, you know, just as we are helping other people manage their stressors, we're having to also manage our own, and really having to talk to ourselves and pay, you know, I always tell my patients, pay yourself first, understanding that you have to fill up your gas tank. You can't give from an empty vessel. And so if you're continuing to give, especially in this time where everybody's under stress, then you're not going to have anything left to give to anybody else if you don't fill yourself up first. And I think, Narissa, you made a good point that, you know, in this time of COVID, because this is all new for all of us, we are all taken out of our norm. And so because we're all taken out of our norm, this is stressful for everybody. And so it's okay to say that you're in trouble. It's okay to say that you're having a difficult time. It's almost made, you know, where, especially in the Black community, where things like depression, anxiety, stress, and all those things, it's almost like we couldn't talk about it, because if you told somebody you were depressed, or if I even told the patient, hey, I want you to go on an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication, it was almost like I was telling them, like, you know, like saying a 4-letter word. But now it's okay to talk about that stuff, understanding that once we recognize that we're in trouble, that we can actually heal ourselves, and that we are safer understanding that we need the help than we are trying to suffer in silence. And so that's honestly what I tell my patients is not to suffer in silence. Say that you need to help, because you'll never fix the things that you don't face. And it's important for us to not just say it, but then to seek the help and do something about it. And if we as physicians, I think all of us are passionate about what we do. We're all passionate. I know if we look around the room, we can probably say the majority of us have a very large African-American patient panel. And that's not by accident. That's not incidental. But I think that if we can tell them our stories and show them how to do it based on our stories, then I think that's why we're so impactful.
Tiffany, thank you so much for that. I think that's kind of a perfect thought to kind of wrap this portion up on. you know, we can talk a little bit more about kind of what's next for the sister circles. We talk about we can't give from an empty vessel. You know, we've been out here every weekend since the end of January delivering 1,000 to 2,000 vaccines to communities of color. We've given about 11,500 doses. And we will be moving forward for another month, and then we'll be wrapping it up because we are also starting to pour from a empty vessel. But it's also time that I want to give an opportunity to our audience members to ask some questions. And so we're going to open up the Q&A. And it sounds like, Stephanie, I want to hand it over to you. You're either going to ask or, yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. First of all, man, thank you ladies so much for your wisdom and everything you just said. Hits home for me particularly. I've had family members dealing with COVID over this past year. And so this just means so much, just hearing everything you're saying and just all the battles and everything that goes with this time. I do have a question from you, and this comes from Anika. And thank you, Anika, for putting this in the chat. She says, many are still hesitant due to their lack of trust, regardless of whether those giving the vaccines look like the community or not. Mm-hmm. So how do you deal with that? Still being supportive and not trying to force it on them?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it's education, right? Having that candid, having that candid conversation regarding what the vaccine is, what ingredients are in the vaccine. You know, we know that particularly the Pfizer and the Moderna, it's just messenger RNA protein, a little bit of fat, a little bit of water, a little bit of salt. It's no preservatives. It's not the live virus. And also, I also tell my patients, hey, you've seen what COVID can do, right? Exactly. Okay, so you know what COVID is capable of, right? This is a new virus. I know that, but I'd rather have the vaccine than end up in the ICU, point blank.
Or dead.
You know, I don't sugarcoat it with the patients at this point. You know, we've been in this pandemic, so I think most importantly, education. And I have noticed that the more you educate them and talk to them about it and ask them, hey, what is your hesitancy? Right. What are the myths that you have about this vaccine? What have you heard? And I hear what they have to say, but then I educate them on the truth of it.
Jackie, that's an important point right there, because I don't think it's the hesitancy isn't necessarily the issue, right? If it's something new, it's natural for you to be hesitant. It's natural for you to say, wait a minute, but don't let the hesitancy become a barrier. Let the hesitancy spark curiosity, so that you will go out and seek the answers that you need, ask the right people so that you can get really good answers. Don't pay attention to social media and these chats and groups and all this stuff that you see on people. Talk to somebody who's reputable, who can really give you sound advice. So overcome the hesitancy. Don't allow it to become a barrier to you, and find out the information that you need. That's the best way to deal with it.
And can I just add really quickly that I think what Jackie and Tiffany just said needs to really be embraced by our colleagues who are not Black, right? Because the reality is that even though we know racism exists and health disparities exist, and we've all experienced that sadness and that distrust and that failure of our health systems, we also know that people trust the person that they choose to give them healthcare. That one-on-one relationship is vitally, vitally important. And so if you're a white or a non-Black healthcare provider, you can't just leave it at, oh, I'm not going to get the vaccine. Like, there has to be that next step, right? Because otherwise you're failing your patient. Yeah. And once you ask and you say, you know, what is it that can I ask you, what is it that you're hesitant about? Do you want to talk about it? I'm here to answer your questions. that's really a pathway towards getting that better understanding so that you can actually participate in helping to save someone's life. And so that's one of the things that I think we make sure that we talk about with our colleagues and other healthcare providers. Don't let a person's race or ethnicity create yet another barrier to helping you give them that access to something that's going to be preventative.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think I just wanted to add, I think that the hesitancy factor is, you know, one thing that doctors have to understand is they have to be empathetic to people and African American people and have an understanding of the history that has happened in this country. Otherwise, you know, if you're not empathetic to that, you know, they think we're crazy. I mean, but, you know, for us to be skeptic, I mean, it's pretty rational when you think about it, when you think about the history of what's going on. So, I mean, we still have doctors who have never even heard of Tuskegee. Probably one of the most horrific things that has happened, you know, when you're talking about experiments and, you know, treating patients, you know. So if you don't know about that, you don't understand why we feel this way.
That's a good point. I want to wrap this part up because I want to give ample opportunity for everyone to get their questions in. So Stephanie, I want to give it back to you.
Yeah, so I just want to call on folks and just look at the gallery and just see if anybody has any questions that just are hitting them right now that they want to ask the group. And please don't be afraid to unmute yourself and just speak out. You can also use the functions at the reaction functions to just raise your hand at the bottom of your right-hand bottom of your screen. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask the Sister Circle? Yeah, we have one from Marcus Banks Bay.
Hi there. And Sister Circle, I really appreciate you all's voice. And I can hear your just your passion, your compassion, your empathy, having been a hospital and military chaplain and being on the front lines with this COVID situation out here in California as well. And so coming from, you know, this perspective of being on the front lines and balancing your profession between this idea, because the, should I say, reimagined table is grief and loss. How are you all managing this, should I say, concept of the probability of COVID being a reality of the world indefinitely, you see, and being in your profession? Because the rational thinking person, right, is like, we don't know when this is going to end. Do I want to remain here, you see, or maybe rethink what it is that I want to do?
I think that's a good answer for Narissa. I think Narissa will be able to answer that.
So, you know, I think about this all the time because, again, back to my word trauma, that's what we've all been going through. And with very real life-threatening things that we've had to face in this past year. And again, COVID being a lot, but then other issues as well. And what I know from experience is that whenever you're facing adversity or trauma, you have a choice. You always have a choice. You can say, this thing is going to break me. This thing is going to forever take me off of my trajectory. It's going to take something away from me. It's going to make me less than who I was. Or you can say, no, I'm going to continue to stand. I'm going to continue to fight for the things that I know that are important to me and that really make a difference to people, and live my life And maybe even I'll be able to turn this very negative, bad situation into something really positive. And so it's a choice that we're making. Look, we're human beings. We have been scared too.
Yeah.
But yeah, what we saw in this was an opportunity to do something greater, to do something better together. And that's part of the strength of being in this circle too, because we can get energized by each other and supported by each other, and to know that we need to keep pushing, even though we're tired. We need to keep pushing.
Man, we know that, and no other, should I say, engendered group understands that term of being tired than the Black woman.
Hello.
Yes.
There you go.
But we do it anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and I thank you all. Thank you.
And I think through COVID, it caused me at least, and I'm sure for you guys as well, to change your outlook just a little bit and to appreciate the small things.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like going to the grocery store without a mask, or planning a trip, or going to see family. So it makes you appreciate life. This situation has made me appreciate life more than I've ever had before. It also has afforded me the opportunity to rely on someone, a higher being, because this is not in our control. And so letting things go and accepting what it is and making the best of it.
Jackie, that's a good point too, because I think that there's several studies that show when you talk about resiliency and becoming a resilient person and being able to deal with adversity, being able to be adaptable and to be able to be flexible to the fact that, you know, this is our new normal. This is going to be for the long haul, and coming to the realization that, you know, okay, this is my new normal. How do I make the best of the situation in my new normal? Understanding that none of our lives are ever going to be the same. All of our lives are either going to be better for it, or we're going to become bitter by it. And so it is about choice. It is about really honestly making the choice to say, no matter what, I'm going to stand. And when you talk about, you know, really depending on a higher being, you know, medicine and spirituality has walked side by side for years. And there are so many studies out there, so many studies. I teach my medical students a class on spirituality and medicine, that those who have a spiritual faith over denomination, those who have a spiritual faith just fare better when situations are, you know, difficult. And so if there is something that you tap into, a higher faith or some type of spirituality that you tap into, that is really what you need to lean on in these moments, because that's, you know, it's shown to be not almost as effective, but as equally as effective as taking an antidepressant to deal with difficult news and anxiety, depression, and all of those things. So, you know, Jackie and I are both osteopathic physicians, so we believe in a whole person philosophy to medicine. All of these things that we're talking about, whether it's physical health, spiritual health, mental health, all of these things all come together. And so we got to make sure that we address each piece of that to be, you know, to be as healthy and whole as we can be.
I love that. I love you pointing that out, that how important that is. And especially in our Black community, how oftentimes that is part of the backbone of our community, and why it works so well for us to reach out to our faith partners and churches to get this done. Stephanie, I know we have some more questions in the chat that you'd like to get to us.
Yeah, I see your hands are going up, so this is really awesome. So we're gonna keep it going. I wanted to bring out one question, and this is really great from Donna Mae. She says, while there is distrust, there are still many without resources to make an appointment to navigate the system, and some still unaware of community-based resources to assist them. How can we bridge that divide? And I'd add, how did you guys bridge that divide even more specifically?
Yeah, I'll answer that one. You know, we worked with so many of our partners in the community. We worked with our local health department, and one of my partners, Lachelle Wardell, I mean, I'm so thankful for her. She's been embedded in our Southeast Raleigh community for decades and has such deep relationships. And you know, between all the sisters and Lachelle and those connections, we were able to get into pockets where people didn't have access and transportation and knowledge of how to navigate the health system. And though initially, honestly, I thought the news cameras were a wee bit annoying, to be honest, what I soon realized was the voice that they were amplifying actually brought attention to it, and people realized they could call their church and say, are you hosting a vaccine clinic coming up? They knew to call, and then this pastor would know that this pastor, and the word of mouth that that has spread throughout the community over the past 3 months or so during this process has just been phenomenal. I have had people from across the country reach out and say, how did you do it? Show me the playbook. And I gladly disseminate the playbook to anyone who's looking for it. Because this is not proprietary. This we want shared and broadcast throughout because, it is a model that absolutely works.
Oh man, that's so great. That's awesome. I'm gonna keep it moving because I want to address everybody's questions. You guys are doing amazing. Greg, I want to unmute you because I saw your hand up really quickly, so you can ask your questions to the Sister Circle.
He's muted.
Yeah, Greg, do you hear us? Greg? I don't know if there he is. There he is. Greg, do you have a question for the Sister Circle?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, I live in Greensboro. I got my vaccine today through Cone. I emailed them last Friday to let me know what was available. They emailed me last Monday at 8:30 a.m. They said it was available at 10. I got on my computer, my smartphone at 10:02. And I had it this morning, 11:15.
Awesome.
Awesome.
My question is, you are all doctors, and I've been very impressed. My question is, how do you convince someone as a non-doctor, and I'm not a doctor, to get the vaccine? And you can join your experiences. I'm not a doctor. I have a cousin who was resistant. I was shocked that she was, but I can't go to her and say, I'm a doctor, you should know this and this and this and this. So how do you as a non-physician help get out of the hesitancy of people you know, relatives or friends who should get it, but they are at that giving you say, I'm not doing it. Let me ask. I back up. I'm scared to do it. Help me blind laymen convince friends and family.
Natasha, do you want to answer that? I mean, I know you've done a fair amount of this yourself, and I saw you educate, convince someone, but didn't you talk about like some people in your family were uninterested, and how would a lay person help convince someone to get vaccinated?
The layperson convincing.
Yes, the convincer.
Convincer, yeah.
Well, what I would say about the COVID vaccine is, to me, I mean, when you're talking about research and articles, you used to have to go to, buy a journal in order to get it, to even get to see the articles. Now, a lot of this stuff with the COVID vaccine is online. You can actually look at like the Pfizer 100-page document of the study, which before, that wasn't easily found before. So it seems to me that stuff has been transparent. When I'm out, most people don't know I'm a doctor, but I'll walk up to anybody and say, have you got vaccinated yet? And, have you got vaccinated yet? And then, the key thing is finding out the reasons why they don't want to be vaccinated. And, a lot of my patients, once they, for instance, the vaccine was made too fast. Well, when you tell them the technology has been out since the 90s, and there has been research going on since the 90s for modified RNA. That's why Moderna is called Moderna, because it means modified RNA. And that company didn't just start last year. It's been there, researching modified RNA and ways to use it, not only in vaccines, but cancer. So, when it was time for this to go down, they already had the technology there. So, you just have to educate people. So yes, it was fast, but it was fast because technology was there.
It sounds like your point is the layperson can educate themselves to educate others.
Absolutely.
But I also think that Mr. I think it's Greg, the fact that you got vaccinated, you are an ambassador.
An example.
I mean, that is part of, you know, how this is going to spread throughout their community. I mean, I think originally we looked at, you know, overcoming hesitancy, and when the supply is low, then that's not such an issue, but it is becoming an issue. The one that's going to bring herd immunity to not just the United States, but specifically these pockets of historically marginalized populations is when people like you go get vaccinated and shout it from the rooftops. I did it. It was great. It was easy. Go do it.
That's right.
Right, because you never know who you touching. You never know who you touch. And you know, you got to remember, people trust you too. Yeah. You know, so they'll be like, well, you know, Greg got it. So if he got it, I know it must be okay because he got it, you know.
Stephanie, we only have a couple more minutes. Do we have time for another question, or is it time to wrap up?
If you ladies are willing to answer another question, I have one really good one about mental health that I would really love to ask you.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Great. So this is from Latonia, and she says, mental health in the African-American community has a stigma both now and historically. You grow up learning that you don't talk to people outside the family about things, okay? One unfortunate outcome of the pandemic has not only been mental health anguish for healthcare professionals, but also the isolation that it has produced.
Yeah, absolutely.
We think mostly of the elderly. However, there has been a significant impact on the adolescent and teen population.
Absolutely.
This is one group that is not as likely to reach out for mental health care as others. This is a consequence of mental health and healthcare access, financial inequities, and historic stigma. What are your suggestions to manage this group and the trauma that the pandemic has produced for this?
It's a great question.
Yeah, Narissa, I want you to talk about that, and then also as a pediatrician, I just want to add a little color to that too.
So I think it starts with, I think you mentioned talk in there in that whole question. That's where it starts. Allowing the space that it's okay to talk about mental health. In fact, to engage conversations with your young person, to ask them, how are you doing? And even sharing, I think, appropriately as a parent, maybe, how are you doing? So it gives them permission to really, to share how they really are doing. I think, you know, there are a lot of different emotions that kids may, and young people may be experiencing during this time. Some children actually have flourished during this time, being close to family, being, you know, not having to have the constant demands of the social life of a young person. Others have not done as well and have had the isolation, have felt depressed, have felt like they're the only one in the world who may have ever felt like they are. And so I really think it's important for us to keep an eye on our young people, to look for any changes in their behaviors, to listen to what they say when they do say it. You know, I think about a lot of times when people have suicidal thoughts, for example, or who go and end up committing suicide, a lot of times they've told someone, they've either told a provider or they might have told a friend, but we didn't take them seriously. So whenever anyone ever says things that sound like they've lost hope and they have really contemplated that death is an option for their suffering, then we need to take that very seriously. Yeah. And so definitely talking, and then being a good model about what you do for mental health. So don't just preach to them, but, you know, really, what are you doing for your mental health? And really just support that. And as a pediatrician, what would you say to the young ones?
Well, this time has been so hard for so many people. You're right. Some people have been thriving, but so many of our patients, especially because we serve such a low resource community, have really been struggling. They've not been doing well in school or not been attending school with, you know, for all sorts of different reasons, even virtually, and feeling isolated. And so a lot of times that will come up and that will express itself like anger. And many times our families won't understand. It looks like a behavior problem. It looks like anger. It looks like, you know, something's wrong with this kid. And I just try to remind our families, as hard as this is on me, on you, as a fully fledged grown woman, a man with the capacity and capabilities and the language to talk and express, this is a child. And even when they look and act grown, which I hate, but they are children and they don't really have that language and capacity. And so when you see anger and you think, well, you know, they're being a jerk, they're acting out, what's wrong with them? I want you to think, this is what trauma looks like, right? You know, isolation and stress and anxiety. I mean, this is what it may look like. It may just look like behavior and anger. And so I try to normalize that. And when we talk with our teenagers, we always talk with them separately to make sure we're asking questions about, you know, mood and safety and all those different things that can happen in their lives. And I always congratulate them and praise them, right? For being open or being honest or talking about it, and let them know that that is just it's a brave thing to do. And so those are some of the things that we talk with our families about. And the rates of anxiety and depression this year have really been like nothing I've ever seen as a pediatrician.
Can I add one more thing to that? Because I do want to give you some practical points as well to on what to do. One of the biggest things, other than filling up our own spiritual gas tank so that we can pour out onto our children, is turn the TV off. You know, at a certain point, you know, many times we often see that we forget that our kids are in the room because a lot of times they're quiet and they don't say anything, but they're watching the news just like we are. They're hearing what we're saying. So if we're overwhelmed or if we're tired and stuff, they hear some of those things. And so, you know, if we help to give them a sense of normalcy by maybe just turning the TV off, you know, going outside, going to a park, going someplace where it's safe, changing scenery so that we're not stuck in the house all the time, put on your mask and actually change scenery and change environments. A lot of times that will help not just to lower some stress levels, but it will also create bonding. Narissa mentioned nurturing, and I think Narissa or Rashida mentioned, you know, being around each other has been helpful to both of us. But, you know, when we turn the TV off and really start to have conversations with our kids, getting back around, you know, tables and just having those conversations of how you're doing, that ability to talk to each other, to nurture one another, and to create that safe space for them is really what they're going to need. So I would just encourage you, if you're watching a lot of news and stuff like that, just turn the TV off.
That is so important. And thank you. We're almost out of time. I know, Stephanie, I want to turn it back to you. I don't know. There's one person who's had their hand up for a long time. We're trying to get this one.
Yes, I want to give, thank you, Dr. Monroe. I want to give Anika like a chance, and you guys can summarize this in one question. She had a really good question about you guys, directed to you guys. Anika, go ahead.
My question was, what are each of you ladies doing for self-care? As you know, I'm a person that does push self-care and wonder what you all were doing. I mean, there's different things, whether it's walking, cycling, journaling, spa bath, your own bubble bath at home. So just what are each of you ladies doing also during this time for yourselves?
Quickly, I'm going to go through, and you go first, Jackie, and we're going to go through and say what we do for self-care.
Okay, a little bit of everything. So prayer, it's a little bit of everything to get through this, folks. Yeah. You can't just do one thing. Exactly. But prayer, I had a coloring book, counseling, running, walking, HIIT trainer, and shopping.
Love it.
Narissa, what about you?
Meditation. I do, my mom and I, we watch movies, we watch Bridgerton together. That's our like little treat. I talk to friends a lot. I love to talk. I love to, you know, just live that experience. And I also love really excellent food. I have found some great recipes and some great restaurants to keep them open.
Yeah, I love it. For me, instead of a glass of wine, because I don't love it, a hot bath. Like that is my glass of wine. Like I take a hot bath most days and it melts the troubles away. Michelle knows I sometimes eat dinner in the bath. I'm not even kidding. Like it really, when I leave there, there's not a care in the world. And then also my husband and I, because, you know, we're at home all the time, but we're also so busy and we've been out vaccinating, you know, almost every weekend. He will plan date nights for us, and we go to this park bench that's right down the street, and we bring takeout food, and we have our outdoor dining together, and that's how we've been having date nights over the past year. So that's been wonderful. What about you guys, Michelle? What have you been doing for self-care?
Well, before you pulled us into doing these vaccination drives every Saturday, Rashida, you remember that my monthly spa massage
that we're going back to?
Yeah. Because Natasha knows I'm cheap, and so I used to I'd be like, oh no, I don't need a spa. But then I started going every month, starting on my birthday, and then but we have to go back to that, Rashida. Hint, hint. Yeah. But the other things, you know, I've taken up new little hobbies. We're not in virtual platforms like, you know, regular people, and so I know a lot of regular people, other people who are not physicians are tired of virtual everything. Whereas for me, you know, I've learned how to do charcuterie boards, virtually. I've learned how to do like the little paint thing. Y'all know, I really enjoyed that. I mean, I have really started saying yes to almost every opportunity that I have had come my way, just to say, you know what, it's different and I'm going to try it out. And it's been incredibly helpful. And quite frankly, I have to say that relying on my support group, you know, I'm kind of known as a connector, and I love people, and I am so privileged to work with Natasha, and my colleagues are fabulous, and I have really good friends at work. And so for me, that has helped that sense of isolation, because I get to talk to them every day.
So for me, you want to go?
So for me, it has been the spa with Michelle, our spa days. And for me, it's been exercise. For me, it's been exercise, trying to get healthy. Because even as doctors, we fall off sometimes. We like good food, and sometimes it's not always good for us. But exercise, I do the Peloton bike every day. Club Bangers, if y'all want to know Club Bangers. Yes, that's it. Alex Toussaint. Okay. Yes, he burns the calories. And I do in the afternoons. I'm a type 1 diabetic, so you know it's really important for me to make sure my diabetes is under control. So I also do high intensity interval training in the evenings. So I exercise like twice a day right now.
Wow.
And watching what I'm eating. So,
girl. All right, Tiffany. I'm sorry.
So for me, I am actually empowering myself to say no, recognizing that no is a complete sentence, and being okay with saying no, not now, not yet, not this season, any way that they need me to say it, not right now, whatever you need. I am also shading my plate, really looking at my plate, understanding that I have a lot on my plate, and being able to take off certain things off my plate so that I can create some level of balance. I pray all the time. And I really, honestly, I don't think any of us mind saying it. We're doctors, but we are all women of faith. And so I believe that God is going to get me through, just like he's going to get many of us through. And so prayer, meditation, all of those things are really important to me. And I'm a music lover. I will listen to music. I will sing. I will try to dance. I will just have enjoyment of music, relaxing music. And then the last thing is that I also love silence. I really love just having quiet. We talk for a living all day long. And sometimes we have to talk about COVID when our relatives and friends call us too. And so I enjoy just being in a car and having nothing going on but silence.
Sounds delightful. So much. I want to have to try Club Bangers because that sounds like right up the alley. I like that. I'm going to turn it over to you. I know we are.
Ladies, this is incredible. Thank you. I'm gonna try Club Bangers too. I heard about them. This is I'm gonna, now I'm in. Oh my goodness.
You don't need a Peloton bike,
right? Yeah. I was Peloton. Yeah, I'm all about it. Oh my God, ladies, let me just express my gratitude for all of you today. This has been such a beautiful talk and so important. And I just want to say thank you for everything that you guys do. Thank you for risking your lives, risking your everything to do the work that you do. We appreciate you so much. And so just to wrap us up today, again, special shout out to Dr. Monroe for working with myself and Andy and the rest of the Reimagine team to make this happen. For everybody that's out there, before we close up tonight, please check out the upcoming table talks. Zubin, you might want to throw up that slide if you haven't already. The upcoming table talks that are happening in the next couple of weeks. We're doing table talks for all different communities at Reimagine. Very excited about this platform. Please check out these events. And then also feel free to reach out to myself and anybody at Reimagine. Following this program, we're going to be sending out an email of resources and a nice little video about the Sister Circle that was out in the North Carolina News. But overall, ladies, again, thank you so much. And we're so grateful for everybody to be here tonight. I want to wish you all a great good night and thank you again. So take care, everybody.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.